Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about increasing an elephant in the room and getting to be a bigger elephant all the time, which is how employees, whether it be in the government or the private sector, small business, whatever, how are employees to be evaluated, as in performance evaluation, if they're hired on the basis of race or gender. So now, given that in a lot of companies now, particularly the bigger companies, and certainly the public service or government departments, the amount of affirmative action hires, be they based on race or gender or both, or sexuality, sexual proclivity, they now outnumber the merit hires to whatever extent there were merit hires to begin with. So the proportion of affirmative action hires pretty much across the board in any substantial or business of substantial size, the affirmative action hires are more numerous than the merit hires. Now, affirmative action hires, because they've been hired without any consideration of merit, they do not see why they should be evaluated, why their performance should be evaluated. The mere mention of performance evaluation, as far as they're concerned, is it's racism, it's misogyny, it's fascism, it's Nazis, it's bigotry, it's so on, and they're terrified of being responsible for their actions or being evaluated by performance. Now, I guess the only way to do, which is what a government departments do, is they have large panels of people that do the performance evaluation. So they have matrix systems of colleagues and peers and supervisors, and they all sort of appear in a panel to do the evaluation. Some of which is effectively an interview where people are questioned and then they get an evaluation. Now, in these panel sort of situations with performance evaluation, no one ever gets a bad evaluation, or at least the affirmative action hires don't get one. So, if you're a black lesbian, you're always going to get a good evaluation. So evaluations are issued on the basis of not performance or not contribution to the business or the department or the government, utility or anything like that, but purely on the basis where you appear on the victim totem pole. So once you've been hired on affirmative action, you effectively can't be fired, and you're able to cite any sort of pressure to or any accountability that any your manager tries to make you accountable for your performance or your behaviour, for that matter. You can always scream racism or homophobia or something else, misogyny and so on, and then that means you can avoid any accountability. And this is now being a weapon that's being used by all affirmative action hires, not all, but many. So I talk to executives, people I know, but also situations I observe, and this seems to be increasingly becoming the norm. So the HR department says, well, there's too many white people in the sales department, for example. So you've got to get rid of the white folks and put in other nationalities. We want more women, we want more black women, we want more lesbians, and so on. So they're required to do this. And some of the white guys who are in charge, who are there on the basis of merit, they're even threatened with dismissal if they don't do it. Now, I've sort of been through this myself when I was required to pass through a number of cadet trainees and was told I'd lose my job if I didn't pass through the women. So it happens out there, and it's reasonably widespread, particularly on businesses that companies that want to project the image of coolness and wokeness and things like that. The board of directors maybe, and the guys who run the show and everything, they may be exclusively straight white males, but they want to make sure that the window dressing further down the line is woke. Just executives that I talk to, particularly where it's a performance-related job, like sales as a case in point, or something related to that, or where there's a measurable job performance outcome. You're meant to dig 10 holes a day or something that's measurable like that. Now, women tend not to be in measurable jobs, but increasingly companies are trying to force straight white men, capable straight white men, out of those jobs simply because in that department there's an imbalance. Now, women aren't naturally applying for those jobs. They don't naturally say, well, I want to be in this job, because it's performance related, and they don't want that. Or minorities generally. I found that I've hired plenty of minority people, and I found that it's quite rare they accept being accountable. Whether it be black people or a lot of Indians, Chinese not so much. They do accept that to some point. Whereas white people might accept, but white males might accept it as that's how it is. You're measured and evaluated on performance. Very few people outside of that, straight white males, are prepared to accept that. So when any company takes on an affirmative action hire, these people don't want to be evaluated and frightened of it, and are quick to call racism. But it's even worse, because when you hire affirmative action, when affirmative action hires are made, they have a sense of entitlement or acquire a sense of entitlement. They don't have it when they start, and they realise that they're not going to be evaluated on performance, and they can pretty much do what they want, and everyone's going to be, all the white folks are going to be too frightened to make them accountable for work or behaviour. So in one case, there's a junior sales administration clerk, and quite a senior sales person wanted something done that was supposed to be the job of this non-white female who hasn't been that long in Australia, and the brown woman said, well, I don't care, I'll do it when I'm ready, and if I don't feel like doing it, I won't. That was kind of the gist of it. And the white person said, no, it's your job, and you're required to do it, and I expect you to do it, and I expect it on my desk tomorrow morning, and it's already weeks late anyway. And so the brown person, not only do they not, they could have done it, but I'm not going to have some white person telling me what to do. I'll show them my power. I'll show them how powerful I am. You're a racist, and you made a racist comment when you were talking to me. No one else heard it or saw it or anything like that. It doesn't matter. Now, the power of the brown person is so great in this company, even though she hasn't been there, like she's been there less than a year and that sort of thing, and even though the white person's been there a long time and is a highly commended, she's female also, is a highly commended sort of employee of the company, and has a long track record of achievement and so on. The company had no hesitation, none whatsoever, in cutting loose the white woman. And well, we don't know that you prove that you didn't say anything that was racist, that sort of thing, and gave a very low bar of evidence for the brown woman the young brown woman to make an accusation, but then put a very high bar on the white person. The white woman was straight, so they just showed the white woman the door. There's the door. Off you go. You're fired. You're out of here. You've upset a brown person. You've upset a junior brown person who has no credentials, no track record, no achievement, who clearly is not doing the job she was supposedly employed to do. But it doesn't matter. She's the brown woman, the young brown woman, was an affirmative action hire. You can't hire an affirmative action person purely on the basis of, this case, race and gender, and then apply strict performance criteria to them that you would apply to a merit hire of say, a straight white male. So they got rid of this white woman. Now, you might say, well, that's a rarity. No, it's not anymore. It might have been years ago, but it's not anymore. So this is happening across the board now, and happening with increasing frequency. So we need to really understand that performance. Once you go down the affirmative act, or any business goes down the affirmative action pathway, hiring people on the basis of race, gender, sexual proclivity, and so on, then it becomes very difficult to then apply performance criteria. So increasingly, it's not. And talking to people, executives now, again in the more performance-related roles, but they're saying the affirmative action hires are in effect unmanageable unless that person is motivated to do the work themselves and wants to do it, which is very much a minority. Affirmative action hires, they want to improve. They see that they've been given a great opportunity, given a job that they otherwise couldn't dream of getting into, but now they've landed and they really want to make the most of it. There are some around, not many, but there are some around, but the majority see it as an entitlement, and they see any questioning of their work or what they're doing, or any type of accountability or performance evaluation as something that they shouldn't have to put up with. And if they have to scream racism, or he tried to rape me, or something like that, so these the managers are very careful, particularly if it's a brown woman, and they daren't be in the same room alone with these people. It's just too dangerous. That they could be accused of something, and that'd be it. Not only does the brown or black person, be it a woman or anyone else, is able to avoid accountability just through screaming racism or sexually inappropriate behaviour or anything like that, they're also able to get the most senior white person fired, no matter how long they've been there, and their track record of achievement and loyalty to the company and so on. That's just how insane things are. It's sort of the cancel culture writ large into the corporate Western world, or indeed the government sector. So certainly the people I've been talking to, they say the affirmative action hires are unmanageable. There's just nothing they can do. All they can do is hope that these people will want to try and contribute and want to try and do better. Now that various things are done where they try and give. Say again in sales type thing, they try and give the coziest, cushiest sales territory that's been built up by the straight white male into being quite a formidable territory. Then they'll just gift that to the affirmative action hire. So the person sort of walks straight in the door with one of the best sales territories in the company, that type of thing. And, a bit like when the black people took over South Africa, it only took them a few years to run it into the ground, or in Zimbabwe, Rhodesia and all these things, all these places that were vibrant economies. As soon as the black people took over, they ran it into the ground. This is the same thing. When the affirmative action hire is given the luxurious sales territory, as it were, they managed to fuck it up in short order. So, but the executive in charge of the sales, the sales director or the VP of sales or whoever, there's the top executive management. No, you just have to somehow manage. You have to somehow deal with that. That's your problem, and that type of thing. So they're not given any. They're not cut any slack. And so some of these guys are in a state of despair because they're forced to get rid of their top performers, all of whom are straight white males, take on these affirmative action hires, nearly all of whom are utterly useless, and then they're also forced then to give the easiest, coziest jobs and territories and positions to the affirmative action hires to make it really easy for them to succeed, and they still don't. And then when they try to measure their performance, say, look, you're not performing, you need to work harder or do this or do that, or have a bit more training or something like that, then someone's going to scream racist or rapist or a bigot or you're a Nazi or something like that at them, and then they could lose their job. So it's simply not worth it. They'll just try and gently coax or plead with the affirmative action hire. Will you please work harder? Will you please turn up on time? And so they're able to do this, the affirmative action hire, without penalty. But the point I'm sort of trying to make here is that when there's only one or two affirmative action hires, well, who cares? and where the affirmative action hires are in jobs where it just doesn't matter what they do or don't do. But it's not that way. Now it's in the key jobs and in jobs that ideally are performance related. And yet there's still white people are being forced out of those jobs, and affirmative action hires, non-white people put into them. So I see this though as an increasing problem. Part of the West destroying itself, and part of the the globalist and the globalists know this. The globalists know that this is undermining the West, the social fabric, the work ethic, and undermining confidence, and so on. And the globalists know this, and it's part of their shtick to keep on pushing this until the West is completely crushed and undermined. We also have to remember, according to the globalists at least, middle class straight white males, working class to some extent, but straight white males and Christianity are the two big obstacles to the implementing the globalist project. Now, there are subsets such as the rule of law, due legal process, and free and fair elections. Those are also issues, but the big defenders of those things are straight white males and Christians, and that's why they have to crush those things. You've been Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.